Hello, BookTube. All right, we're back for an 8K Q&A part 2. We'll start with REPS. Number 1, what is your favorite episode of The Twilight Zone? Don't have one. Number 2, what is your opinion of William F. Buckley Jr.? Fairly good prose stylist. And a little bit of a mystery to me why he is was so venerated as an interviewer. Number 3, would you recommend reading Carlos Castaneda's pseudo-yaki books for fun? Absolutely not. They're a complete waste of time. Number 4, when you visited Mexico, what did you like the most? Most of my strongest memories of Mexico are the beautiful topography, about the beautiful locations that you can go to. They're just mind-boggling. I don't know that there's any one thing that sticks out, but Mexico, for instance, I went to a lot of ruins, and I met with a lot of people, had a lot of wonderful late nights. But it's the beautiful physical locations, especially the coasts, that stick out in my mind. To the Lit House says, congratulations, a live stream would be cool. We shall see, although that's not a question. To the Lit House, by the way, I cackled at, quote, the little man who turns on the light when you open the door of the refrigerator. Well, thank you. Although that's also not a question. James Holder says, congrats on 8K. Why, thank you. My question, why is Alexander the Great one of your 5 guys? Because he was dreamy. John Garganarakis says, has 3 questions. Number 1, you have said you dislike philosophy as a discipline, but are there any books about ancient Greek philosophers that you'd recommend? Biographies, intellectual histories. Bettany Hughes did one called the Hemlock Cup just recently. It was just about 5 years ago, something like that. It was quite good, very good on Socrates. I'd certainly recommend that. I'm not so much of a fan of I.F. Stone's The Death of Socrates. Thereby hangs a tale. But number 2, what do you think is going to happen to Trump after January 20th? Well, regardless of what happens, I believe he's going to skate cost-free on every legal case against him. This array of legal cases that are waiting for him as soon as he loses the protection of executive privilege. I believe he's going to skate on all of them. I don't think he's going to suffer any kind of repercussions from any of them. And whether or not he becomes starts a media empire or something like that, I'm not sure how he would do that. You'd have to be absolutely insane to lend him money. He's a terrible businessman. He runs businesses into the ground on a regular basis. But I'm not sure of any of that, but I know one thing for sure, which is that he's going to call himself still president. He's not going to say he's an ex-president. And he's not going to say that he lost power on the 20th. He's going to say that he is still president. And that brings us to the most important thing, which is not the one particular individual, Donald Trump. The most important thing about that after January 20th is that 100 million enthusiastic, avowed Nazis in America are going to believe him. 100 million Nazis in America on January 21st are going to say Donald Trump is still president. Even though that's not how it works. Even if the election was fraudulent, it certainly was not. We have learned in the days and weeks and months and years since it was called for Joe Biden, we've learned the size of his victory. There's no question here at all. But even so, it doesn't matter. A solid third of this country is going to say that he is still president. That's never happened before. So what shape that will take, I have no idea. But Trump will be on social media unless Twitter does the self-evidently obvious thing and blocks him, bans him for life. He supports terrorism. He supports crackpot theories. Any other person tweeting the things he does and retweeting the things he does would have been banned by now. But regardless of that, he is going to hold press conferences and make statements on any venue that he can that he is still president, that foreign leaders ought to meet with him. God only knows what he will do with the state secrets that he knows between now and then and after that. God only knows what he will do. I hope, it's a forlorn hope, I know that it won't happen, but I would hope that Republicans and Democrats would come together after the 20th to slap that down. That is actually treason. It's intensely illegal for you to do. No other person than Donald Trump could get away with doing that, with saying, here are state secrets, I'm going to publish them, I'm going to talk about them on openly. I am calling on people to become a militia. I deserve international briefings with other foreign leaders. That is totally illegal. That is a jailable offense for the rest of his life. I hope he doesn't skate on that, but I know that he will. I know that he will. Republicans are telling themselves, they are not Republicans anymore, but they are telling themselves that they will not push back against any of that because they need his base to win elections. And once you say you winning in the next election is more important than the country, you're not a Republican anymore. You're not an American anymore. And that is what we face after the 20th. We face a very prominent public figure claiming to still be president of the United States. And question number 3, what do you think of the plays of August Wilson? I really like them. Let's see here. Look Up Sonomics says, hello, Mr. Donoghue. I have to start by thanking you for introducing me to John Ruskin, who is quickly becoming a favorite. I had never heard of him before and may never have, if not for one of your daily penguins. Well, wonderful. That's great. My question is somewhat related to this. I'm a fairly recent product of a modern educational system whose English curriculum here in Canada consists mostly of reading Margaret Atwood. I'll leave it at that. I'm now discovering English literature on my own, but I'm finding the supply of classic literature pre-1900s very slim, both at my local used bookstore, library, and Chapters. Is this because I don't live in a very large city, or are these books actually disappearing? I know they're available electronically, but a penguin wall of classics is something to aspire to. They could very well be. They don't make stores any money, so it could very well be that stores are cutting back on what they have available. I don't know. I don't know how small your town is. If your town is really small, that might be the answer. Caleb says, we watch you because we love you. I recall that the Prime Minister was the first trollop you read. How soon was it before you picked up another, and how long was it before you had read through all of his books? Which ones do you reread most often? It wasn't long before I picked up another one. And the ones that I reread most often, by far, are The Prime Minister and The Duke's Children. But I also have a weak spot for The Way We Live Now. I love that book. I reread parts of it a lot. T. Dargan says, well done, Steve. You deserve it. Has it really been 5 years? I think the reason for your success is that when I listen to you, I feel like I'm listening to a friend, and I know my grandchildren can be in the room while I'm listening. And they just think Nana is talking to Steve again. I hear that so much. I hear that from so many people, and it means the world to me. I don't have a question, but if you have time to wave to Toby again, he would... Oh, Toby! Oh, hello, Toby! How are you? He would love it. He still goes back to watch his special Mars video. Yes, Toby, I made a video about Mars specifically for Toby. Well, hello, Toby. It's nice to see you again. Feel free to let me know if you want me to make you another video. I'd be happy to do that. Scorchter Schwarzersticken says, number 1, my dogs are absolutely terrified of fireworks. Oh, yeah. It looks like they are going to die. There are fireworks that don't hurt the ears of dogs, but most people are asses and don't use them. Is there anything I can do beyond hugging them and telling them everything's going to be all right? No, you can't. Now, there's nothing more you can do than that. If they're sensitive to that sort of thing, to random, very loud noises, boy, oh boy, there's nothing you can do other than just try to be with them, try to calm them down. Question number 2. I went to a used bookshop and got some old books in French, but I can't find anything about him and hope you could help me, since you are not only, according to Matthew from Maybury Book Club, the most well-read person in history, but also a polyglot. Can you tell me if these books are good and worth my time? Oh, good Lord. Chateaubriand is worth your time. Definitely. And Penguin Island is worth your time. Absolutely. Some of these I don't know. So feel free to email me about books that you found at your secondhand bookstop. Let's see here. Question number 3. What authors you've seen in all the 28 years of your life that you think should become immortal? Oh, God, I wouldn't want to presume. I'll be interested in watching which ones survive. It's all a question of schools. It's not a question of literary worth. It's a question of schools. It's a question of what's taught, what becomes part of curriculums. So I imagine that in the next 20 years, we're going to see the dropping of a whole bunch of worthy people, and we'll just see what takes their place. Number 4, what do you think about the use of animals in science? It's absolutely obscene. I am 100% against it in all cases at all times. And if your first response is going to be, well, my grandma wouldn't be alive if it weren't for medicines developed through the torturing of animals, my response is going to be, your grandmother should be dead. So, not yours. I mean, the typical response I have got from people playing dirty pool in answer to this question is always to go to grandma. And I think that when they give me that response, I'm going to back off. Well, of course I don't mean, but no, that's not what I'm doing. But anyway, you want to go on here. I asked because you keep saying for several different things that the animals didn't agree to be there. For example, to make leather-bound books. My rats also didn't agree with the fact that I will open their heads and take their brains out to put in a microscope. I didn't ask their consent. In that case, is that a case that the good and development of science and medicine outweighs the problem? Does that mean does that mean the ends of advancing science justify the means? I asked that also because if there was a rat hell, I would go to it. Okay, we're all friends here, but this is a very serious subject, and it's worth pointing out here that if there's a hell just in general, you're going to it for what you have done, if you keep doing it. Because what you are doing is torturing and then murdering beings who are capable of humor, who are each individuals unto themselves, who are capable of altruism, capable of love, capable of affection across species barriers. The only reason that you can do that and justify it is because they aren't your own species. And that is exactly what every brutal human mass murderer has thought about their human victims. The only yardstick you can use that they would fail is that they can't take an SAT. They can't take a standardized test in a way that a human can. And we don't do that with humans, right? We don't say that little children with Down syndrome can be operated on, can be experimented on, can be liquidated, can be harvested. We don't say that about them, even though they're not as intelligent as we are, not as proficient on standardized tests as we are, not as eloquent as we are. We don't use that standard with them, and that is the only standard that makes any sense other than just simple speciesism, which I would like to think that we would all agree is completely bankrupt as a reason for doing anything, as a reason for justifying anything. The rats that you are experimenting on are every bit as viable citizens of this planet as you are. If you are torturing them, creating anguish in them, tormenting them, and then killing them, you are guilty of an enormous moral crime. And my answer to the question would be, I don't know how the degree to which the question was asked in jest, but it's a very serious subject, and my answer to the question is very much meant in earnest, not in jest, which is that you should never do it again. Stop immediately. Medical science does not rely on this kind of brutality at all. I would argue that we wouldn't be that far behind in a lot of our advances even without it anyway. But nowadays, in the 21st century, absolutely not. There is nothing valuable being done here. Nothing. That can't be done in a million other ways that don't require the wholesale imprisonment, torture, and execution of thousands of innocent animals every year. So, in answer to the question, and including the unasked question, I would say, I am totally against it. Everyone with a scrap of ethics should be totally against it, and starting tomorrow, Monday morning, you should absolutely not do it. You should absolutely not do it. And if any kind of an answer to that response of mine is going to be, well, I've got a job, think about what kind of an answer that is. We routinely condemn figures in history who committed atrocities when they defend themselves by saying, well, I had a job to do. We routinely condemn them. All I'm saying is, don't be one of those people. And if the ultimate backstop response here, as it must be, as it always is they're only rats, we fundamentally disagree. Anyway, question number 5. Victor Fascinate is saying he is writing a sequel to A Suitable Boy for literally 2 decades. Can we consider that he is already dead, like George Martin, and will never finish that said sequel? I don't believe we'll ever see it, but who knows? Number 6. Who is the greater poet, Ovid or Shakespeare, and why? They're equally great. Number 7. Do you think Pynchon has one last novel for us, or was Bleeding Edge 7 years ago his farewell? Since he is literally 187 years old, isn't that like he can take another 2-decade hiatus? Or maybe it is better he doesn't write anymore, otherwise we could get more old people books like Don DeLillo's The Silence. I don't think we'll see another serious Pynchon novel. No. Danny Barry says, congratulations on a well-deserved milestone. I have just finished reading Edith Hamilton's mythology. I'm considering reading Joseph Campbell's A Hero with a Thousand Faces next. How does the quality of his writing compare to Hamilton, and is it a good place to expand my reading on the topic? It's thought-provoking. He's not as elegant a stylist as Edith Hamilton, but he's got an energetic style of his own. It's a thought-provoking book. It's been the seedbed for so much else. It's been used in so many different venues and contexts that it's probably worth reading. I wouldn't read all the rest of his books, but that book is worth reading. Do you have any other suggestions for further reading that might or not be as popular? Thank you again for having such a great, informative, and entertaining channel. Further reading mean mythology? Of course, I'm going to stick up for Bullfinch's mythology, even though it's a little outdated, but it is a quintessential Boston production. And maybe for enjoyment's sake, you might want to read The Greek Myths by Robert Graves. It's totally crackpot, so keep that in mind if you're reading it, and he is just confidently saying, well, this is obviously an allusion to a mountain huntress cult. No, it's not, and you don't have any proof. So you have to read it as largely a collection of his flights of fancy. But it is interesting in that grounds. PHXSNS1 says, you've often praised William Gaddis's The Recognitions. What do you think of his later novels, J.R. and A Frolic of His Own? Don't like them as much. I think there's a lot missing that was present in The Recognitions. NW says, congrats on a well-deserved 8K. You people keep saying it's well-deserved. I don't know how I would end up deserving it. All I do is put a camera on and talk to you. And I do it because I like to talk to you every day. So I don't know how it's well-deserved. Anyway, number 1. What are some recommendations for starter books about the samurai and the Meiji Restoration? Well, for the Meiji Restoration, I would definitely choose Don't Miss Emperor of Japan by Donald-Keen. What a book. Oh, my. What a book. Number 2, what are some factors that make you want a physical copy of a book over an ebook, or vice versa? There are no factors that make me want a physical copy over an ebook, except availability. If I were browsing at the Brattle Bookshop in downtown Boston, I found some neat, old, obscure book that was on a subject that I loved or an author I really wanted to read, and I could snap my fingers and have that book as an ebook on my iPad, I would do it and leave the physical book at the Brattle. I'd do it in a heartbeat. It's only availability. A lot of the old and somewhat obscure, out-of-the-way books that I love to read do not exist as ebooks as far as I know. But in 2020, a huge bulk of my reading moved over to ebooks, so there isn't a factor. And number 3, what books that you've read this year would you consider an essential addition to a personal library? Well, that is the question, isn't it? Unfortunately, there is an answer, a rather elaborate answer. There is the year-end Steve Reads Best and Worst Books of the Year. Happens at the end of every year at the beginning of December, and it's going to happen this year. The top 10 and bottom 10 books in 15 or 16 categories. One category rolled out each day on under the Steve Reads banner on the Open Letters Review website. It is the toast of the literary world. It is an exhaustive rundown of the books that have appeared this year, and you shouldn't miss it. You absolutely shouldn't miss it. And virtually everything in that list is something you should add to your personal library. And fortunately for you, once you're done with that list, absorbing its wisdom, there's a gigantic number of previous lists from previous years. I stand by them all. Malcolm Thompson says, I look for your videos every morning. Oh, thank you. Question, do you keep a writing journal? If so, would you describe the format? Is there a particular make of journal you use? What should a useful book journal include? I used to separate these things, writing journal, book journal. Now I just keep it all in one journal. And I love it. I absolutely love it. It was Clark Kegley that introduced me to the idea of it. I don't I don't know what explains that. He's the ultimate dude, bro. Maybe that's it. If I had known him in the flesh, face to face, when he was 18, he would certainly have become one of my boys. Certainly would have. I get that sense of him. There's a genuineness to him that doesn't exist in a lot of other bro-tube prosperity gospel type YouTubers. And he's a big fan of journaling, and he says every year you should start a new journal. And he's in favor of larger sketchbooks, a blank page sketchbook, the kind of black pebbled cover, very simple thing, but the larger size. So you can draw in it, and you can sketch in it, and you can stuff it full of stuff. And I'd never tried that before, and I tried it because of him, and I love it. So I'm never going back. I wish I had it here, but I don't. It's in the other room. I keep a journal every day. I have forever and ever and ever. Oh God, ever and ever. There are boxes full of them. And the excuse me, the principle is always the same, which is that you've got to make it entertaining, you've got to make it interesting, and you've got to make it valuable for you. So it's not just a rundown of what you did and what you spent and where you went. Instead, what you when you open your journal, I myself sketch all the time, and I love to doodle. Oh my God, I love to doodle. And when you open it, you've got a blank page, and you have your day, or if you're doing it first thing in the morning, you have yesterday, that you want to capture on the page. Not just all of the quotidian details that are going to be very interesting to the future you, who is the person you're writing for, but also the sense, the feeling, the thoughts. Now that that you're either looking at or looking back at that one day, here's a blank page. Capture it, and do it quickly, relatively quickly. Don't pause, don't ponder, don't certainly rewrite, because that is the practical benefit of keeping a journal, is that it forces you to capture in words, in a discrete word count, a whole subject. And if you do that every day, those muscles get incredibly strong. And I love doing it. I absolutely love doing it. I feel terrible when I don't make a journal entry. So that's what I'd recommend. I don't know. I'm trying to remember the name of Clark's channel. Is it Refusing to Settle? It might be Refusing to Settle. That might be his YouTube channel. You're going to get a lot of junk. You're going to get a lot of junk on that channel, because he's very much in the seminar going prosperity gospel bro tube type, be a millionaire, crush it by 30, that sort of thing. But he has a number of videos on how great and fun it is to keep a journal, and they'll fire you up. So if I remember, I'll leave a link down below. How are we doing? Okay, we're fine. The Bookish Bryants. Oh my, here we go. Congratulations on 8,000. This pair of Donoghue has a pair of questions. From Becky, what is your favorite word in the English language? Can we use hyphens? if we can use hyphens, then my favorite word, my favorite expression, my favorite term in the English language by far would be all-you-can-eat buffet. And from Scott, what are your thoughts on the fantasy novels of Patricia McKillop, Riddle Master series or otherwise? They're good, but they're not great. They never soar. I hate to say it, because she has a devoted following, but it's true in science fiction and fantasy just as much as it's true in literary fiction. There are B and C list authors, people whose best game simply doesn't pull you up out of your seat. They're still worthy. I'm still glad they're there, but I've always considered her one of those. Nothing that I've read a lot of her stuff, and I've never read anything that did that made me soar on the inside. So one step up from Andre Norton, but definitely one step down from Ursula Le Guin. So I like her, I guess is the most I can say. It sounds terrible, though. Let's see here. Luke and Jennifer Higgins say a few questions to answer, please. Number one, what do you believe were the actual circumstances behind the mysterious death of Edgar Allan Poe? I blame Brian at Bookish. Number two, The Worm Ouroboros, worth reading or not? Oh my God, yes it is. It's definitely worth reading. It's an unknown but still pivotal fantasy classic. And number three, Amelia would like to know if you or Frida enjoy pizza. We don't. If so, what are your favorite toppings? Yeah, just doesn't do it. Every once in a while, back when I used to live with people who got pizza, sometimes they would get one of the toppings had broccoli, and I would just pluck that off and eat it. But the pizza itself, no. This was the cause for a long-standing philosophical discussion decades and decades and decades ago about whether or not I actually was American at all, because I don't like beer, I don't like pizza, and like any sane person, I think that watching a baseball game is a form of torture that ought to be outlawed by The Hague. Baseball, beer, and pizza. And if that wasn't enough to convince you, I also don't like any kind of pie. And I hate Bruce Springsteen. So there was a large discussion going on about whether or not I was an American at all. Let's see here. Tomorrow's Classics says, your videos bring me much joy. Oh, my, thank you. And I'm glad that I can make you smile with the cartoons I occasionally send. Oh, you're the cartoonist. Oh my, they are good. Any requests for the next one? You let your genius take its turn. I'm just say what I've always said. I hope you are archiving them because they are brilliant. I am so honored to get one. Question number 1. What are your thoughts on the endless Bane sci-fi book series by authors like Eric Flint, Dave Freer, Mercedes Lackey? Yeah, I sense your thoughts on the matter with that word endless, and if so, I tend to agree. Dean, what are you doing? What are you doing? She's digging her way into my lower spine to make herself more comfortable. I don't see much worth in those series. I will occasionally pop back in on Mercedes Lackey, who of course is capable of great work, and I will occasionally pop back in on Eric Flint, but I think science fiction writers, I understand you've got an audience locked in, and you don't have any retirement plans, so I understand the attraction of an arrangement like that. David Drake had the same thing forever and ever, but I really think they hurt their literary legacy by writing stuff like that, by churning out stuff like that. Number 2, thoughts on Marcus Height's dwarf fantasy books. I don't think I've ever read them. Oh no, I think I read the first one and thought it was just so-so. And question number 3, I just finished reading Don Quixote for the first time, and it's the best thing I've ever read. Funny after 400 years, but also a touching friendship and genuine caring between Sancho and Don Quixote. What is the best platonic friendship in a novel? I understand that a lot of people would vote Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, but for me, it is always going to be Colin McRae from Lonesome Dove. I think that's the best portrayal of male friendship that's ever been done. And who would you cast as Don Quixote in a film? I think Peter Capaldi would be good. Are you trying to get me to be disloyal to my beloved Peter O'Toole? Or are you ruling out Man of La Mancha as not Don Quixote? Capaldi would be good. I'm not sure that Don Quixote is all that filmable. I would rather see a new movie version of Man of La Mancha than I would an attempt at Don Quixote. How are we doing? Well, let's do one more. Thomas R.P. says, what are some of your favorite musicals? Well, I just mentioned Man of La Mancha, The King and I, Sound of Music, South Pacific. There are a whole bunch. There are a whole bunch. Even 1776. There's nothing in that I don't love, even though I'm not 100% sure how effective it is as a show. But I love it, and there are so many others. There are so many others. Call Me Madam. There you go. Your thoughts on the Book of Mormon? I like the bits and pieces that I've seen, but I've never actually seen it in the theater. And whilst we're at it, what are your thoughts on South Park? It's very easy humor. Sometimes it can be very good, but I tend to like a little more meat on the bones for my humor. Okay, we're going to end that, because that's the next installment here. We'll move right on to part 3. So I'll see you then.